Rev up your engines! Believe it or not, this beautiful truck is a 96 Toyota T100. You might not know what the heck a T100 is, so I'm going to tell you. Toyota decided in the 90s they were going to make bigger trucks. Instead of just their little bitty trucks, they're going to make bigger trucks. Not as big as F-150s, but a lot bigger than their previous versions. So they decided in Japan only to make these T100s. They're all made in Japan, but strangely enough, they never sold them in Japan. It was for the US market, but they're all made in Japan. This guy picked this one up pretty cheap, and he's had the body work all done over. Now you can see on the sticker here, it says a 97, but these parts are from a different vehicle. The vehicle itself is a 96. The regular VIN number will show you that. That's the real one that belongs on the truck. Now, after making these things about 5 years, they decided we're going to go even bigger, and we're going to make T150s. Well, guess what happened? Ford Motor Company sued them and said, you can't call them T150s. We have F-150s. Like, wait a second. T's and F's are different letters, right? How the heck could you say you own the rights to the number 150? Doesn't make any sense at all, right? I mean, you see 1500s this, 1500s that from different companies. Why? They couldn't, but they didn't like it. And Toyota didn't want to make a big stink, so instead they called them Toyota Tundras instead of T150. Now, this was the first big size one, the T100, all made in Japan. The T150s are, as you know them, the Tundras, they're all made in the United States. Originally, they made them in the forklift factory that they used to make Toyota forklift trucks in Indiana. Then they moved it all to San Antonio, Texas, where they still make the Tundras. Now, these T100s basically came in two styles. You could get a 4-cylinder or a 6. Now, this is a 6. So I'll open it up. And you can see, got a 3400 4-cam V6 engine. These are extremely reliable engines. You can see he's had a timing belt changed in 2008, and now it's 237,000 miles on it. It doesn't burn any oil. Now, if you are looking at one of these and you want a configuration like this is a 4-wheel drive one. You really want to get the V6 engine. They did make them with 4-cylinder engines, just a little bit too underpowered. This one is perfectly fine. It's not a race truck, but you're not going to get stuck with a 4-wheel drive. These engines can basically run forever. And you can see it's still got the original power steering pump and the original air conditioning compressor, and yes, it still blows cold. It's a Toyota. That's why they decided to make these trucks. In Japan, they're not big on pickup trucks, and neither were they in Europe. They make these exclusively for the American market. Now, really, they're not competing against Ford, GM, Dodge. The Tundras, until they went last year to the stupid V6 twin turbo, when they had the V8 engines in the Tundras, they were unbeatable trucks. Now with that V6 and the turbo, I've seen problems with them. I don't like them. But the old ones, they would just run forever. Toyota didn't care about keeping up with all the bells and whistles and superficial plastic hoopla that Dodge and Ram and GM and Ford is always, who's got the bigger tailgate? Who's got a tailgate that does 57,000 things, right? No, they just made solid, reliable trucks that could run forever, and this is obviously one of them. Now, I lived in Massachusetts his whole life, so as I said, all this stuff was rotting off. So he's had all this replaced with used parts from around the world. Now, if you know a lot about these things, you'll notice this is a little bit shorter bed than you're normally going to see. Well, it's because it came from another truck. And it was put on this truck because the other one was all rotten off. But as we look under, we will see, check it out. This frame is rock solid. Now, he's had it all clean and weatherproof so it won't rot anymore, but this is a 1996. This was a long time before Toyota trucks that had rotten frame. My son had a Tacoma, it had a rotten frame. A lot of people have brought me Tacomas and Tundras that did have some rotten frames. The salt would eat them up. For some reason, Toyota originally put a pretty good coating on it, but then for a few years, they did a crappy job coating it, or they used the wrong kind of coating. I don't know. Maybe they tried something new and it didn't work. And a lot of the frames rotted. This thing is rock solid. Normally, you're not going to have to worry about a 96 having a rotten frame. Always go in there and check, but you can hear this thing is rock solid. The reason that the other parts had to be replaced because the fenders and stuff are all bashed in, then they rust, and that's a lot thinner, not coated as well as the frame. The frame's what you worry about. As he found, you can get parts for these things all over the place. It's a Toyota. He went all over the place, got that nice little top for it too, used for 500 bucks. And interesting enough, it's just tall enough that he can get his four-wheeler in there. And he said, they don't leak. It's totally sealed and it doesn't leak when it rains. He did buy fancy wheels and fancy tires because, hey, he's turned this old truck into a really nice truck. Now he's got these big wheels. It's four-wheel drive. It's got big V6 engine. He says he gets between 10 and 13 miles a gallon. 13 on a good day. You're thinking about getting bigger tires, loading your truck up, just realize gas mileage is going to go down. This aggressive tire pattern, you're not going to get stuck, especially with four-wheel drive. But all that tire equals all that friction. All that friction equals crappier gas mileage. So, realize that. I mean, it's a nice truck. It's going to get bad gas mileage. That's just how they work. And the funny thing is, one of the reasons Toyota went to their Tundra being V6 with twin turbos, because they said, well, we got to do something about that gas mileage, right? Well, a friend of mine bought one of those brand new Tundras last year in Tennessee. You know what he told me? He said, I'm going to get rid of this truck because it gets horrendous gas mileage. He used it to tow his business, which is like a taco stand, right? So he spent all that money on a brand new Tundra that had the V6 twin turbo that they say gets great gas mileage. He actually got worse gas mileage than he was getting with this old V8, because when you're pulling weight, you need a lot of torque. So he bought this nice truck. He loved the look of the truck, but he said the gas mileage is horrible on the thing. And Toyota said, oh, there's nothing we can do. We looked at it. It's fine. They don't get the rating that they say they do when they're towing, just like the BS of Ford and their F-150 Lightning electric pickup, where they say, oh, it can go 200 something miles. Yeah, I saw a guy tow his boat 90 miles and he was almost completely out of electricity. So don't listen to any of those ratings. You need to tow, to pull. You want a big V8 engine, right? And in this case, these never came with V8s. It's the T100, the T150s that they actually never produced but called them Tundras. They came with V6s in the beginning and V8s. Then eventually they were all V8s, and then now they went back to V6s, which as far as I'm concerned is a mistake for a big truck. They didn't screw up on this one. It's a 96 and it still runs like a clock. We'll start it up. Okay, 236,000 miles. The only thing I hear is a little bit of cam noise. You're always going to hear a little bit of cam noise on an engine with that kind of mileage. Doesn't burn oil, runs perfectly fine. He changes the oil regularly, takes care of it. These things can last forever. Now we'll see if it makes a liar out of me as I hook up the scan tool. Now I'm trying out this new X-Tool scan tool. They gave me one before and it had a lot of problems, and they admitted they had bad software. So here's a new one with upgraded software. Technically it's called IP 819 TPMS Diagnostic System. And here we go. It's ramping itself up. Now, this isn't old. It's a 96. We're going to have to do it manually. Put the data in manually because it's too old. There's no auto reader that's going to read something this old. Communicating, it's going to be pretty slow. These old vehicles are a lot slower. The computers are much slower than the modern ones, but they still should give us some decent data. You can see by the flashing green light, it's working. It's sending information out. It's only 66% done now, but it's old and slow. Just like me. While we're waiting for the slow communication, check out this little garbage can. It's cool, look. Push. And guess what? It won't communicate. It fails to communicate. So I have to say, this X-Tool, it fails. I tried it earlier on my wife's Matrix, and it wouldn't work on that. They said they'd fix the software. Then I tried it, and it did communicate. So they did fix that software, but this is the second vehicle I used at it. Now this one, it won't read it, so I would stay far away from this particular tool until they perfect it. It's too much beta software that doesn't operate. It went the whole way through the whole system, and then it says fails to communicate. So we'll get something better. We'll get an oldie that I know is going to work. So I get my dirty old Innova. You can see paints on it and everything, but let's plug this baby in. Plugs in the same part. Lit up. And you can see this is auto linking. So we will do. If there's any trouble codes, not checking out the data. We'll start her up. And you can see no powertrain, DTCs, or freeze frame data. It doesn't have any trouble codes. And now we'll look at live data. We'll start her up. Check it out. Short-term fuel trim is 0%. Okay, as you can see, this thing's got 236,276 miles on it. And the short-term fuel trim is 0, meaning it's running perfectly. Ignition timing's good. The airflow sensor's good. Ooh, the short-term fuel trim went to 0.8. So it's going between 0, 0.8. Every once in a while, it bounces to -2. It's still hardly nothing on a vehicle this old. Close the hood. Take it for a spin. The four-wheel drive system is all manual. No electronic crap, you pull it in gear. Of course, there's no backup camera, but hey, it's a pickup truck. Now, he did go a little bit too big on the tires because you can hear them. They're rubbing a little. Sometimes you put too big tires on, you're gonna rub when you do a big turn. So I'll try to keep away from doing big turns here. It's a truck, so it's only gonna go over my bump here relatively easily. And away we go. Four-wheel drive, nice and high up in the air. It is an old truck, it's a 96, right? It's got a solid frame. Now, of course, it's not gonna be the smoothest riding thing in the world. It's an old truck. And it's lifted, and it has gigantic tires in it too. So it still runs perfectly fine, but it's not gonna be smooth riding like the more modern ones are. We come out to deal with Friday afternoon traffic. Here we go. We'll look around. And here comes Friday traffic. Everybody in Newport gets off early on Friday. They're rushing to get a drink or something. Look at them all. But it looks like there's an opening. So here we go. We'll step on it. That engine still hums. Do you see that smooth shift? This thing may have 236,000 miles on it. Still shifts like a dream. Engine still got about the same power it had in the beginning. Mind you, this is kind of a Frankenstein truck because, like I said, it's got a different bed on the back, different side. It's even got a somewhat different cab on it too, because a lot of the stuff had rusted up from being hit and the salt on the road eating up, but it did not touch the frame. Like I said, the frame's still solid as can be. And he was smart. He had it all cleaned off and then coated and rubberized so it won't rot in the future. Okay, it's got all this mileage, but how does it idle? Well, there's a V6 that's still smooth, extremely smooth. Filming one-handed, so I don't want to corner too fast. Plus, that tire will rub some because he's got a little bit too big tires on it. You can see he's added his own little camera here so he can see front and back. There it is. You can easily add this stuff yourself. Why buy another vehicle when you can buy a camera? It was Toyota's first attempt at making a bigger truck. And considering that this 96 is still running like a clock, I'd say that they did a pretty good job the first time. If you do want to get one of these, I do advise getting a V6 engine, not the 4, especially if you're going four-wheel drive if you want to tow anything. Now you know what a Toyota T100 is. A little history lesson, but history that's still going down the road. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.